Jaime Tabachnik is the CEO and co-founder of Solvento, a fintech company aiming to modernize payments and working capital solutions for Mexico's fragmented freight industry. Before founding Solvento, Jaime served as Chief Operating Officer and Chief Revenue Officer at Mack, where he gained firsthand experience with the operational inefficiencies across supply chains. From being born out of an MBA pitch competition at Kellogg to announcing its Series A round of over $12 million last fall, Solvento's mission has remained the same: to help carriers digitize their workflows and get paid faster. Today, we'll dive into Jaime's path to founding Solvento, explore the nuances of the freight ecosystem in Mexico, and learn how Solvento's product offerings are bringing automation and trust to one of the country's most essential industries. Hey, Jaime, how are you? Thanks for joining.
I'm good, Zach. How are you, man?
All good on my end. I think when I think of people that know and understand the freight industry, especially nationally in the Mexican-U.S. corridor, there's a short list that's maybe above you, or maybe you're at the top. So I'm looking forward to digging into some of the nuances and hearing your expertise.
Appreciate it, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
So I think first it would help to kind of jump into the inception story of Solvento and your background and how this really shaped your thesis for what you were going to do and serve when it comes to the Mexican freight industry. You were the COO and CRO of Tomex, a national leader in electrical materials and equipment with over 24 locations across Mexico. Was this where some of the early key challenges you face in distribution and logistics laid the foundation, or was there another experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely my time at Tamex is the foundation to my passion to solve the problem that we're solving at Solvento. So Tamex is a family-owned business that was founded by my father. So I got a great opportunity of joining very young with with little professional experience or a small professional experience. And I was trusted with the main distribution center management when I was very young, 23 years old. And I was very lucky also that they trusted me to lead the implementation of technology all across the supply chain and the operation of the company. So I got very deep into warehousing, trucking, inventory optimization, order management, and the different parts that make a supply chain move. And that's where I really got passionate about logistics. So that was definitely the foundation. Then when I decided to leave the family business, thanks to the network that I had built in the freight tech space, I got an offer to join as CEO of early stage company that was building a digital brokerage or marketplace on the road freight space. And I was hired as CEO, and that was what ended up giving me the inspiration to start Solvento alongside my co-founders, because I was trapped in between the cash flow issues that exist in this space. So by being and living and breathing that problem every day, that's how I ended up concluding that I needed to solve this.
And before we kind of jump into the Solvento part, the family business part is intriguing to me because I think there's a lot to learn, but then there's this concept of people saying, well, this is not mine. I want to start my own thing, but also this like amazing thing where you can carry on the legacy. How did you balance that? And in Mexico, it's hard to grow your business, as you know, and I've observed.
I think there is a bag of feelings that come with having an opportunity like that, because I think it's an incredible luck and opportunity to have a successful family business that you're invited to join. And family businesses are obviously disorganized in a lot of cases and have growing pains and have family relationship issues. But in the end, I think the most important thing is that they give family members opportunities that potentially you would need a longer time to have at another company, at another place. So I was lucky that I was able to take advantage of that and be trusted with enormous responsibilities very early in my career, which I think it was a key part of accelerating my knowledge, my understanding of a particular space, etc. But working with family is extremely hard. Matt, it's not for everyone. And in the end, after a 7-year stint, I took the decision to leave, not necessarily because I had the necessity of owning something, but I did have enough of an understanding that I needed to be more free, and I need to make my own mistakes and my own learnings, and like go through that journey that my father went to build the company that he has been able to build. Like I knew I needed those scars, and I needed to kind of cut that umbilical cord, and potentially, and I always have been clear about the possibility of coming back one day, but with so much more value to be added because of the risks and journey I decided to take on my own.
I was going to ask that question. I think it's interesting. You're at an Asian point, where you have an opportunity to start something your own, and who's to say that you can't go back at 50 or 60 and provide some type of advisory role. Very interesting. You point that out. So going into your time during your MBA, and then if I remember when I first met you, you mentioned Mack, like we won this competition or this grant, and that was basically the seed, or you could say angel money at some point to start Solvento. Share that, and then we can kind of get into how you met Billy and Pedro, and then you're off and on your way.
Yeah. So I've been friends with Pedro and Billy for a long time. Fun fact about our story or our history is that Pedro and Billy's father built another electrical supply distributor in Mexico that was my father's biggest competitor. But the mutual friends brought us close, and we built a relationship. We became close friends. And Pedro and Billy had started a credit business. They were lending through payroll in the private sector in Mexico. And while I was at Biz Logistics leading this company and I was doing my MBA, I approached Pedro and Billy and I shared with them the pain I was going through. So, and I told them, guys, I think there's a huge opportunity here. I don't know, you guys are in the credit space. Maybe you know someone that is addressing this pain point or that understands how to solve this. And they told me they had no idea and that they were like didn't understand the risks and the idiosyncrasies of freight, so they also couldn't be helpful like in providing me a solution. And then that conversation continued, and like we ended up saying, and I ended up proposing, why don't we do it? And that started getting the creative fluids flowing. And luckily, like I don't truly remember if it was in the middle of a conversation we were having, but I received an email from Kellogg, from my university, inviting me to a venture competition. And the requirements were sending a short executive summary of the idea of the business and a short video. And I showed the invitation to Pedro and Billy, and I said, hey guys, like we have this idea. I think we complement each other because of my knowledge on the freight and logistics space and your knowledge on the credit and financial space. So we don't have anything to lose. Why don't we participate? We create this executive summary and a video, which I have that video here and it's hilarious. And we sent it just also to organize our ideas with not a lot of expectations. We sent it and we ended up being selected to participate in the competition. So we said, okay, let's do it. And very long story short, we end up winning, which we entered without having a lot of expectations, and we won a prize of $160,000.
Wow.
So that was
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
That gave us a lot of confidence. Yeah, with that, that was enough for me of confidence boost to quit my job, join full time, and also for Pedro and Billy to decide on pivoting from and wind down what they were doing for us to focus on what Solvento is today. And also because of that competition, we were introduced to an amazing mentor whose name is Rick Sulo. He has his own venture capital firm called Equal Ventures, and he advised us through the competition. And then when I remember perfectly, he told me, hey, guys, you have a real world business. Don't worry a lot about winning the competition, but you guys should pursue this idea. After we won the competition, he helped us with some introductions. I don't know if it was probably a couple months later, we had a term sheet for $1.5 million to start and start building and traction. So it all happened so fast. Yeah, we stumbled upon it. Like I had very little idea about the venture capital space and what I was getting into, to be completely
Exactly.
honest.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah,
When you
100%.
watch the video again, do you laugh and go, "Oh, the vision's still the same," or was your pitch like, "Oh no, what was I saying?"
No, I think it's like it was very generic, naive, but I think the vision is still very aligned to solving the liquidity issues in the on-the-road freight space, and that's what we pitched at the moment. Obviously, we had no idea of a lot of the challenges that we would have to go through to get to where we are today, and the other set of challenges that we already recognize are in front of us. But I think that the mission and the vision of the company keeps being and stays very true to that first video and executive summary.
Yeah. So you guys get the term sheet. I guess you close this initial round of like over $1 million, which is pretty impressive. It commends to you your background and your team's background, your co-founders. How'd you get your first adopters? Did you call up people in your network and say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing"?
Yes. Yeah. So the first iterations of our product, we leveraged my network that I built through my years in Tamex. And we actually kind of leveraged what we call load generators, which include any type of shipper or distributor or 3PL or broker. So any entity or company that hires and aggregates on the road freight suppliers, trucking companies. The pitch at that time was we're going to help you have a more loyal and trustworthy trucker base. How we're going to do that, giving them liquidity so they can keep their trucks moving. And the way we did it at that time was we talked to a shipper and they gave us access to their carrier base, and we went one by one explaining and selling the product. And I did that all by myself. I literally talked to the owner operators, explaining, and it was very tough because the shipper understood what we were trying to do and they were open. Yeah, go talk to my carriers, sell them your product. If that's going to make them better at their job, we're aligned. But then there was a lot of lack of trust, of understanding of financial products. Then when they accept and they were interested in the product, onboarding them and getting all the documentation from informal and small carriers, it was a nightmare. So
I
it
was
was
going to
a
ask
tough
that.
period of time.
This initial group, most of these smaller carriers are relying manually on sheets of paper, correct? Or something along these lines. What was the process like at first? Were you guys just saying, "Send me a WhatsApp, I'll upload it yourself manually"? Because these guys weren't going to log into what you
Yeah.
had.
With this, we were able to learn of the complexities of scaling by going directly to the carriers. We learned that the aggregator or the load generator, the shipper, the broker understood crisp, like had a very crisp understanding of the value proposition. So we designed a product to process the aggregator's payments and still offer the credit and the cash advance to the carrier, but talking to a much more sophisticated company that one had a better risk profile and two was like much more efficient to onboard. So when we learned about that and we pivoted at go to market, and instead of going directly to the carrier, we pivoted to going through the carrier's customers. That was one of the pivotal moments in Solvento's story, that where we started finding product market fit and really started scaling our offering.
So, if I heard that correctly, basically going to the carriers directly was a lot more efficient than going through the shippers.
No,
Opposite.
I'm sorry, I was not clear. So
Okay.
first, like we did get access to the carriers through the shipper, but they only gave us like their contacts, and we needed to do one sale one by one to sell to them one by one. But then we changed our strategy into selling the product and embedding our solution into the payment flows of the shipper. So we only needed to close the shipper, implement our products, and with that, we were already embedded and paying to carriers. And with that ownership of the payment flow, it would be much easier to expand and offer credit to the carriers.
Because the carriers will do what they need to get the business versus
Yes,
the other way.
absolutely. Exactly.
Okay. So You kind of hit on this, but I guess you can be a little bit more explicit if you have something to add. But this digitization, I think you're in the heart of it. How much has it changed, even since your time at your family's company, and then you had your marketplace? Has it improved quite a bit, or are we still in the first couple innings of really becoming digitalized in these SMEs?
I do see more openness, and I think there's a change in leadership going on in SMEs where the new generations are starting to lead these companies, and the appetite of implementing state-of-the-art technology is starting to shift because previous generations were much more skeptical and slow and close, and like it was much bigger challenge to get them to change the status quo. With this new cohort of leaders, I think we're just starting to see this technology and the digitization adoption accelerate.
Yes, it's the classic. I built it this way. I'm going to stay this way until I'm done. Now,
100%.
now
Yeah.
there's a new generation.
Why fix something that's not broken? That
Exactly.
type of mindset. Yeah.
And in some ways, it's fair. They've built something that's theirs, and sure, but maybe not forever. I think you would do a good job explaining this in my research before this. You have many players in the freight ecosystem in Mexico and also internationally. But on the freight side, you have shippers, which are the traditional manufacturer retailers. Then you have these freight forwarders that I guess you could say like are a Flexport, correct? And then you have carriers, 3PLs, and then you have these brokers. Where does Solvento come in, and can you break down the nuances between each? I mean, because sometimes there is a blur
Yes.
between some.
So we can get complex. We have like end customers who, and I'm talking about the B2B space. So
Mhm.
an end customer would be the entity that displays goods on the shelf for to be consumed by the consumer. So you can picture an end user as a Walmart or any retailer. Then we have the manufacturers. Manufacturers are the entity that manufacture or transform any type of goods to be sold to an end user. Then we have logistics. In the logistics vertical, we have different type of logistics entities. That one type is the famous PL, a third-party logistics company. Mostly, there's like different nuances, but mostly it's a company that offers logistics services to retailers or manufacturers or distributors that include warehousing and freight services. And I say both. Also, a retailer can hire a 3PL because a retailer can have the stores that are open to the public, but they also have distribution centers and warehouses that they need to manage, and they need to distribute all that inventory throughout their networks. So that's also why an end user also has the need of logistics services, of warehousing and distribution. And then we have the carrier world, so trucking companies. And carriers are companies that offer the services of moving goods from one point to another. And there's obviously different transportation mode carriers. You have road, ocean, air, rail. And then you have the different business models. Some carriers that own their entire fleets, or that have, and there's other nuances of how they operate. There's some carriers that own the trailers but outsource the trucking with owner operators. And there's different flavors of it. Okay, because sometimes you have an operation of like Nestle that wants to move goods and deliver to Walmart, and Nestle hires a 3PL. The 3PL hires a carrier. The carrier hires an owner operator. So you have many players involved in moving
And
a
that's
single
just
load.
within freight. And then you can have that for air and rail as well,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
So for you guys, you're focusing on the freight, and then who would be your primary customer? Oh, there's multiple from what I'm understanding here, right? You can really
Yeah,
work.
our ideal customer is like our end user is the SME carrier, right? The problem that we are solving is the liquidity pains for the carrier. And how do we get to the carrier? Our go-to market and our carrier acquisition motion is through the carrier's customers. So we do it through 3PL, but also through shippers, because there's a big number of shippers that hire carriers directly and don't operate through a 3PL
Gotcha. For various reasons, which we don't need to
for
get into.
various reasons. Yes.
Okay, so that's the go-to-market. That was a great breakdown. And these carriers, to be broad, basically have to accept these payment terms. They don't have much credit access. They're basically just trying to keep their customers and get business. So they're left with just being kind of hung out to dry, correct? And they're super fragmented.
It's hyper fragmented. So to give you a quick number, and I think this is very similar in many geos, but there are over 200,000 registered carriers in Mexico, and over 95% of them have less than 30 trucks. So it's hyper fragmented. Most of them are SMEs or even micro companies of a couple of trucks.
And these 95%, most of them would be national only or also moving product or
Most
goods.
of them national only.
Okay.
There's a tendency, obviously, right now, things are getting more uncertain with the current geopolitical situation. But most of the Mexican carriers move freight nationally. There is a tendency of carriers to develop the capabilities to also do cross-border operations and offer cross-border services to 3PLs and shippers.
Okay, great. That's clear. And now you get into this challenge that these carriers have of this liquidity. How do you guys go about with this underwriting? Because I'm sure these smaller freight companies that have 5 or 6 trucks, how much is there to underwrite? And
Part of our strategy of going through the carrier customer is that we underwrite the carrier's customer. So we take on the risk to start originating credit to the carrier of its customer, which we've learned and we've learned that it is a better quality of risk. But our vision is through the data that we're compounding and the data asset that we are building, we're going to be able to originate credit products directly to the carrier and help them build that credit history and understand what are the drivers that drive credit worthiness in this space.
and that data will come through their customer, which you're going to rather than the carrier itself.
Exactly.
Yeah, and before we get into some of the basic geopolitical challenges now with these tariffs, if you just look at the national opportunity with freight, it's still quite big, right? So there isn't this need to be cross-border as much, or is that maybe me misunderstanding that for you guys with the
Mexico's
carriers?
economy relies on trucking.
Mhm.
And the Mexican economy on its own is big enough, and it's big enough of a problem for us to build something huge. Obviously, the tailwinds of the integration into the United States help a lot. And the tariff situation and all the uncertainty that is bringing is having a direct impact on economic growth, which has a direct impact on amount of loads that are moved by carriers, which impacts Solvento's addressable market. So I'm going to say that we like to see this negative impacts into the industry that we're serving. But to answer your question, the size of the market without the integration to the United States is big enough to build a huge business.
And to push it further, it would be almost silly to think that this is forever, right? In some ways, do you see this as more of a short-term challenge and not as much a
Yes,
micro or macro significant problem in the years to come?
I think this is a negotiation tactic, and I think both sides are going to sit down on a table and come to an agreement, and there's going to potentially be a renegotiation on the treaty, and hopefully that happens sooner than later, because I think what's the most painful and hurtful thing is uncertainty. If tariffs are going to be enforced, and it would be better just to know about it and go forward to the next chapter with that idea embedded into our minds. And but the uncertainty is what hurts most. So hopefully we can get into the table and get to an agreement and renegotiate whatever needs to be renegotiated, and we can continue to focus in what matters.
Exactly. The uncertainty allows nobody to make decisions for a long horizon. So
Yeah, it
then you're stuck in
paralyzes
limbo.
everyone. Yes.
Okay, just I guess to hit on like the last couple of things here. Obviously, very impressive what you guys did last year. It shows what you guys are doing from a traction and growth standpoint. I think you guys did a Series A, something around $12 million. With that, how do you plan to utilize this capital to grow your team, to improve the product, and what are you looking forward most in the next 12 months?
We're looking to accelerate growth in a very focused way. So, with this new capital, we are able to unlock additional dry powder to go out there, acquire more load generators, and automate and extend more cash advances to carriers, which is what we want to prove. And then, in addition to that, we are going to ship some very interesting experiments that are related to freight intelligence. We're taking advantage of the big amounts of data we have compounded through time and productizing it to offer transparency and visibility to the different players in both sides of the market to make better decisions, and also start experimenting with additional financial products for carriers. So it's, I would say, a year of accelerating growth and consolidation of our core offering and starting and getting signals of the additional products that are going to be added into our platform.
Gotcha. Last two things, and they're pretty open ended. I'll go with the more open ended, challenging one first. What's been the biggest mistake since you've started Solvento?
It's a very good question. There's been many. Has to be we and I personally had all the signals of a customer that was going through financial stress, and I let my personal relationship with the company like I allowed it to blur my judgment, and I allowed the company to continue using our credit products and offering it to their carriers, and that ended up costing us. It was a very expensive lesson. So I would definitely put that lesson on top of my list. And the biggest learning is one, we need to make sure that we're not biased when we make decisions. We need to have our business mindset and leave all feelings out of the way when we make business decisions. And we need to recognize when it's time to, how they say, bring an adult to supervise the party. And I think that it took us a little bit longer than what we needed to bring a very senior chief risk officer to the team.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Jaime, because it's very intriguing when I hear that because it takes a lot of self awareness. Some people would maybe in denial, put the responsibility in another department, but it seems like you were very clear, like this can't happen again. And at the end of the day, it's your responsibility, it's your company's.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Last thing, what are you most proud of to date?
I'm most proud of the talent density in our team today. That's something that for me sometimes is surreal, to be surrounded of people that are so knowledgeable and talented. Sometimes the imposter syndrome hits. Yeah, I'm very proud of the team that we're assembling. So that's definitely number one on what makes me proud.
Awesome. That's all on my end. Appreciate the time, Jaime, and as always, grateful for your access and friendship over the last few years. And
Absolutely, my man. It was a
yes,
pleasure.
yes,
And
we're
let's
due
do it
to catch
again.
up.
Thanks so
Yep.
much.
Bye.
Yeah, let's do it. Bye bye.
That's a wrap on this episode of Cut the Check, presented by VCMX. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed and leave a review. It really helps more founders and investors discover the show. You can find me on LinkedIn at Mack Meyer or check out my website at mackmeyer.com for more insights on startups, venture capital, and the Latin America ecosystem. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next week.